Hello Year 10, welcome to today's lesson. What I need you to do is just put today's date, classwork, and the title, The Impact of Reservations and the Dawes Act. You might want to just pause your video whilst you do. Okay, after the Battle of Little Bighorn, all Plains Indians were forced onto ever smaller reservations. So by the end of the 1870s, Plains Indians were prisoners on their reservations. They were not allowed on the open plains and were not allowed on their hunting grounds. And the reservations were on land that white settlers did not want. This land was no good for farming, and this made it very difficult for the Indians to feed themselves. This made them reliant on government handouts of food for survival. But the reservations were also run by dishonest white men called Indian agents who would cheat the Indians out of food and supplies. So if you look at the maps we've got here, we've got the map on the left. That shows the Plains Indians before white settlement. You'll note there are hundreds upon hundreds of little tribes and major tribes like the Crow, the Blackfoot, the Sioux, the Pawnee. They were allowed to roam where they wanted, across the Great Plains, wherever they wanted. But by 1900, now that whites have completely settled the United States, the Native Americans are forced onto tiny plots of land, the reservations. And you can see on the map on the right-hand side, those reservations shaded in grey areas. So these people, once free to go where they chose, were now in effectively open prisons. The army kept them in there, they weren't allowed out. So what I need you to do is just, in your own words, just bullet point the paragraph that you see at the bottom of the page. So make your own summary of it in bullet points. So you need to pause the video and get that done now. Okay, so now we're going to continue studying the impact of the reservations and how dire they were for Plains Indians and their way of life. In the yellow box, and we've already made a summary of this, we've understood that probably the first impact of life on the reservations was starvation and hunger and dependency. But there were other consequences as well. Now, you should have a PDF attached to your Firefly task. You need to turn to page 109 in this PDF. You can see an image of page 109 at the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And you should read page 109 and you'll read the impact of government policies and the reservations, and they have a political impact on our Plains Indians, they have an economic impact, a religious impact, and they impact education. So what you need to do once you've read those sections is we need to make notes on each of those consequences. So in your book, you need to put a little subheading that says consequence political, and you need to jot down and bullet point the political consequences of life on the reservations. So that's the Plains Indians' way of life being changed, the fact that the power of their chiefs taken away. So once you've done the consequence political, you need another subheading, the consequence economic, and that's all about their society being reliant on the buffalo, and once that's gone, how they're going to struggle. Once you've done that, you've got the consequence religion, and again you need to read and bullet point how life on the reservation denied them their religious freedoms. And then finally you need to put consequence education, and you need to bullet point how white people were going to use education on the reservations to change Native Americans, to assimilate them, to make them more American, to Americanize them. So again, you probably need to pause the lesson at this point, and you need to put your subheading consequence political and do the activity just explained. Okay, we should have now concluded that the Indians on reservations, and this photograph shows a reservation circa 1880, were once proud and independent people, but now they're forced on reservations, they're reduced to a dependency on government handouts, and they're seeing their way of life, their ability to control their lives, their ability to be independent, their ability to practice their own religion, all of it is going to disappear. So hopefully that's what we've understood today about the impact of reservations on our Plains Indians. And that's the policy that the US government begins to pursue from the late 1870s onwards as a solution to the Native American problem.